Hello everyone and welcome back to another AFK journey video. In this video we're going to be making an updated Celestial Hypogean priority guide. Now that Harak has been out for 3 days, we have a really good idea of his potential as well as his power level. And so we're going to get right into it. I've thought a lot about this and I'm going to give you my reasoning behind all of it. We're going to get right into the number one Celestial Hypogean you should be building up first on your account. It is still going to be Rainier. From the beginning of the launch of this game up until now, Rainier has always been pretty much consistently recommended as your first hero to build. And one advantage of that is that just by getting him up to Mythic Plus, he has his full basically usage. And he is going to help you in Dream Realm. Like early game when you have teams involving Merrily, Corrin, OD, Lily May, Rainier is going to be a great option to run with them because he'll increase the damage that they deal to Dream Realm bosses. And in this tier list or priority, we're going to be really focusing on the performance for Dream Realm because that is one of the key modes in the game to earn more temporal essences for you and just get ranking rewards. Like for example in the season you get season tokens as well. So Rainier to Mythic Plus it cannot be passed on. It is essential. You need to be building him. And you do not need to upgrade his exclusive equipment. Like upgrading it will give you that damage reduction, which can be helpful mainly for PvP. For endless bosses, like no one's really at a risk of dying, so that doesn't really matter. You just have to get him to Mythic Plus, and that is going to be 8 copies. But he should be your first priority, because as soon as you get him at Mythic Plus, he is going to be usable in Dream Realm teams, and he is going to increase your damage by a lot. Because basically, the damage debuff that he provides, increasing the damage taken by 25%. This is going to increase the damage output of heroes which don't have HP per second damage. For example, heroes like OD, Merrily, Corrin. Even though Merrily and Corrin have true damage is going to be boosted by this debuff of Rainier. The only thing that is not going to be increased in effectiveness by this debuff is HP per second damage, like Smokey's Blue Aura damage for endless bosses or Fresto's Vicious Sting damage. Those are not going to be boosted by this, and that's why when you get to endless, Rainier is not used as much, but now Rainier is actually making a comeback in the top endless teams because Rainier does really well with Lily May and Harak both, and Harak is now dominating in Dream Realm. And so Rainier is like one of his best allies. So Rainier is really important for Dream Realm. Pre-endless, post-endless, no matter what heroes you have built on your account, you'll be able to build some strong team together with Rainier Mythic Plus. So this is really important. He's a top tier priority on your account. You should not consider building any other Celestial Hypogean until Rainier is at Mythic Plus. And that's the other huge advantage. You only have to take him to Mythic Plus. That's 8 copies. You don't have to take him to Supreme. You don't have to take him to Supreme Plus like other heroes, which we're going to be mentioning in this priority list. So Rainier, a great hero, overall amazing, and he's become even more powerful with Harak because Harak has HP per second damage, but he also has just regular damage, which is going to be increased and amplified by this debuff of Rainier. And not to mention the position swap has a lot of applications as well. So Rainier is number 1. Now number 2 is not Harak, it is still going to be Fresto. Yeah. The reason for that, even after Harak has been out, Fresto is still used in every single Dream Realm endless boss, and he will continue to be that way. Because even if you're running Harak, who is his best ally? It is Fresto. Fresto at plus 15 exclusive equipment specifically, because then you can have up to 3 bodies for Harak to eat, and those are going to give him stats, going to give him attack, and also it will activate Harak's Supreme Plus ability to get that energy recovery. So you need to build Fresto number 1 first. The other advantage of building Fresto first is that you can run really strong endless Dream Realm teams, like now the second best teams without Harak, using the Fresto. And then once you build up Harak eventually, which is going to be important, then you'll be able to still use Fresto in every single one of those teams as feeding. You're feeding the Harak the Fresto, and you will need to get Fresto minimum to Supreme. Or Supreme Plus is up to you, but Supreme minimum, because that is when you can upgrade his exclusive equipment to plus 15. At Mythic Plus, you can only upgrade it to plus 10, and he will not be able to respawn his illusion. This level 4 ability has now become so incredibly important. It was never that important for Dream Realm bosses, other than like King Croaker, because you never needed to trigger this effect. But now with Harak getting value from eating your own allies, you always want to trigger his illusion being defeated and being respawned. And so this is really important that you get your Frester built number 2 as your Hypogean Celestial. Just on his own, he will be functional in good teams like him, sometimes Rainier Mythic Plus, Mikola, Smokey, Lily May. Those are really strong teams for Dream Realm. And once you eventually build up Harak, then he is going to act as food for the Harak, as well as dealing good damage himself. Even when he's being used to feed the Harak, he still outputs a lot of damage. It's all because of his Vicious Sting ability, dealing HP per second damage up to 40% of Frester's attack per second, and both him and his illusion are able to cast this continuously throughout the fight. And when you give him a good amount of haste from like Mikola, for example, he just has this on a much lower cooldown as well and can continuously stack this HP per second damage and bleeding onto the boss. For Supreme Plus, it is important for AFK stage pushing, number 1. Number 2 as well, Supreme Plus is also going to give him a stat boost. Maybe around 10% of his attack or something, and as much attack as you can give Fresto, the more damage he will be dealing to the Dream Realm boss. However, if you're mainly thinking about using him as food for Harak, then Supreme at plus 15 exclusive equipment is a good place to stop, because then you don't need, like, you know, that bonus 10% attack. That was mainly when he was your dedicated damage dealer throughout the fight. But now things have kind of shifted, and Harak is now eating the Fresto, even though Fresto is still going to deal good damage in the fight. But it becomes less of a priority to get Fresto to Supreme Plus for the stats. He's fine at Supreme plus 15 exclusive equipment, and if you want to be totally efficient, I would probably recommend stopping there. But if you want him Supreme Plus, that is not a bad investment at all. It's a really good option. It's going to boost his attack, and even then, when Harak is eating him, he's going to gain more attack because his attack of Fresto will be higher. But also, the Supreme Plus ability doesn't matter for Dream Realm, but it will help you for AFK stages, especially in the beginning of a new season where you need that shielding. Like, this is a really high shield amount for the first 12 seconds of the match. That is going to make a difference. So Fresto, either Supreme or Supreme Plus, you need to get into plus 15 exclusive equipment. He is your second priority, Hypogean Celestial, and he is the first. He should be either probably the second hero you take the plus 15 exclusive equipment after Lily May number 1. Okay, that is going to be Fresto in a nutshell. He is still used in all 8 out of 8 of the Endless Dream Realm bosses. Before getting to Endless, he is not the greatest option, so you have to keep that in mind. But you only have 1 to 1.5 months of a new season where you're not in Endless. You reach Endless usually about a month after new season begins, and then for 3 months you're going to be in Endless. And that is when Fresto is going to dominate and be used in every single team as the best option. Even after Harak is out, he's still the best in every team. Harak does not function if Frester is not on the team. Okay, now we come to number 3, which has completely been shaken up because the new Hypogean Celestial, which has been added. Harak is now number 3. Things have really changed, like the Hypogean Celestial priority list. And I'll talk about that later at the end of the video and reminisce a bit. But Harak is now number 3. The reason for that, he has been out just for like 4 days, like I mentioned, since Vietnam server, and he has already been used in 3 of the top performing boss teams and getting a huge record compared to the previous best teams. He's the best in Skyclops, no question about it. He is the best in Necrodraken, no question about it. He is the best in Snowstomper, no question about it. Now, it seemed like he's not going to be the best in King Croaker because the boss is also insta-killing. Your team gets eliminated too quickly if you try to build a team around him. People are going to have to test because we didn't have him on global yet at that time. But he was on the Vietnam server and I couldn't figure out a team for him. So King Croaker seems difficult for him. Same with Lone Gaze and Orison. I feel like they're going to be difficult for him to be the best hero. But even if he is the best in the other ones, like 3 or 5 of the Endless bosses, and best by such a big margin, he definitely is your next priority Hypogean Celestial after Frester is done. Also, the thing is, he is a beast in PvP. He is going to help your arena ranking, regular arena. He's going to help your Supreme arena ranking. He's good on offense, he's good on defense. He has just been like one of the most incredible Hypogean Celestial heroes which have been released. Fresto, in my opinion, was the number 1 most incredible hero release outside of the global launch I'm talking about. Like after global launch, we had those 4 heroes, but then slowly new ones were released. Fresto is the most game-changing hero release, but I do think Harak is the second most game-changing out of the ones which have been released after the global. Okay, and now it is all because it's this final line here. If he did not have this final line in his skill description, causing them to lose 40% attack multiply HP per second, he would not be even a top tier option in Dream Realm. Because this is the damage which is going to cause the Dream Realm boss to take a lot of damage. Because the other multipliers are just the attack damage multipliers, they reduce by the defenses of the boss, and in endless mode, bosses have such incredible amounts of defenses that like any damage that isn't true damage or isn't HP per second damage, it just is not, it can't compete with the other heroes who deal that. But thankfully Harak does have HP per second damage, and he has enough of it because also he scales up his own attack over the course of the match up to potentially 260% of his base attack. He's increasing his attack from 100%, which is a normal amount, up to 260% of his base attack, which is crazy. And like when then you apply it to this HP per second multiplier, it is going to be really high damage. But then the other thing, which it doesn't stop there, it's the Supreme Plus ability. After he gets 2 kills, and this is why it's essential that you need to have him kill at least 2 units over the course of the match, he begins recovering 700 energy each time he casts Vicious Bite. It's an immediate 700 energy restored to him, and it will allow him to pretty much cast his ultimate, do a couple normal attacks to charge up to 1000 from 700 to 1000, and then cast again. And then he'll be able to keep applying this HP per second damage as well as his high damage multipliers from his ultimate ability. Although, like we mentioned, it's really the HP per second damage which is the major contributor for Dream Realm Endless bosses. And that is crazy. And the thing is, before we get to end this, he's also going to be amazing because he has just raw high multipliers, like not just including the HP per second, he has some insane damage multipliers on his ultimate ability. And if you can just keep cycling that and increase his stats by getting kills, he's going to be like probably the best in all 8 out of 8 of the pre-endless bosses, like when we start the new season. So anyway, if there's summons in the boss, he's even better because he can get unit kills easier to get the attack up. Like, he's basically one of the most future-proofed Dream Realm damage dealers, because even if they add summon mechanics, he's going to be amazing. Even without summon mechanics, he's amazing. But Fresto is his best ally, which is really funny, because like Fresto was the king of Dream Realm. And now Fresto has been demoted. It's like the king's time has passed, the new king has arrived, but the new king is relying on support from the old king, which is the Fresto. Okay. Yeah, so there's not much more to say. In PvP, he's amazing because he has Tidal Assault, which will give him like untargetability and like prioritizing and teleporting to the weakest enemy, lowest HP ratio to try to set up a kill for himself. And after he gets 1 or 2 kills in PvP, it is very difficult for it to stop him. He is probably going to solo your team unless you have a Harak on your side as well who also got 1 or 2 kills. The only way to shut him down is kill him quickly, and if you have enough support for him in a team, he is just not going to be killed. I guess the way you counter him is Dunling or Diagonal if he's on defense. Like, that would be pretty much my best bet. And being able to nuke through him. Okay, so he is an incredible hero. He is your number 3 hero. You will have to take him to Supreme Plus. You can't stop at Mythic Plus, you can't stop at Supreme, you need to take him to Supreme Plus. The Supreme Plus ability is so important for Dream Realm. For PvP, I mean, you could pass on it. Honestly, the thing is, if he gets 1 or 2 kills and he's casting his ultimate even 1 time, that's usually enough to shred through the team. He doesn't even need to recast it. But for Dream Realm, you need him to keep casting this ultimate on as low of a cooldown as possible, or like cycling it as quickly as possible to keep applying this HP per second damage. And if you don't have his Supreme Plus, his damage output is going to be way lower than if you have it. So it is essential for you to get him Supreme Plus. You need to get him there. And if you can't get him there now, you can build him to Mythic Plus. He can still be the best hero for certain Dream Realm bosses, but it just will not be as big of a damage boost as once you get Supreme Plus. So you need to keep him on your like stargazing wish list and buying him from Guild Store until you get him Supreme Plus. That's 14 copies. But then he is a beast, and you want it for PvP, plus 15 exclusive equipment. Even for Dream Realm, plus 15 is going to give him bonus attack, and he's one of your hard-hitting damages for Dream Realm, so he's still a top-tier priority for plus 15. Honestly, after Fresto's plus 15, I would say next plus 15 for your account should be Harak. But plus 10 gives him all of his, like... the plus 15 is only for for mainly PvP to get that HP recovery when you get the kill, but it's also for the stats, and just for the stats alone make it a good reason to do that. So he is your number 3 priority. Now number 4 priority is going to be Talene. Talene has been, basically Talene was good pre-endless bosses. The problem is now Harak is going to outshine Talene pre-endless bosses. I'm pretty sure of it. Talene is still though a good option in 2 of the bosses, Skyclops and King Croaker. And I find it really hard to believe we're going to be able to put together a team where she is not the best hero to be running in those 2 bosses. I think she's always going to be great there. And if, for example, Plague Creeper is added into the Dream Realm lineup, then I do think that Talene is still going to be a great option, because over there, of course, there are a lot of summons and she's going to burn through them. When there's summons, like with Skyclops, she's great. When you need to tank insta-kills, like repeatedly, she's great. The thing is, she has anti-synergy with Harak, because if Harak devours Talene, he basically, from that point on, for whatever reason, he's like, okay, I'm not devouring anymore for the rest of the fight. And he doesn't get any kill stack, any stats gain from killing the Talene, because it doesn't actually count, like, I guess, as that defeat. So that is this anti-synergy between Harak and Talene. But it's fine. You can run them both on the same team. You can still position it in a way that Harak, like for example with Skyclops, you get kills on the enemy minions. You can try to guarantee that he devours another one of your allies before the Talene. And so he can still get up to his 2 units needed to be killed in order to get that energy recovery from his Supreme Plus. But that's just something to mention. So Talene is now going to be relegated to Skyclops or other summoning mechanic bosses like maybe Plague Creeper, and also King Croaker to tank the insta-kills. Other than that, I find it hard to believe that she is going to be the top option in other bosses. So that's why she's a lower priority than Harak. Harak has now taken a higher priority, but she's the next priority because she still is useful for those bosses, and she's good in PvP as well. All Celestial Hypogeans, they're going to naturally be good in PvP, so we're not really worried about that too much, and are prioritizing that. So Talene, the damage comes from her ultimate ability. It is high, just raw damage, but it is not true damage, it's not HP per second damage, and that is the problem. She doesn't have... And if she had something like that in her kit, she would just be an amazing beast for Endless Dream Realm. But this is what holds her back for Endless Dream Realm, because even though she has insane damage output and multipliers, it has no HP per second and no true damage, which means it is going to be reduced by the defense of the boss. And Endless bosses have such such high amounts of defenses that they're going to reduce his damage heavily. That is the thing. And the other thing about the anti-synergy with Harak, the problem is that she'll be casting her ultimate. It's going to lower her HP ratio. She becomes then potentially she becomes the priority target for Harak, because Harak will target with his Devour preferentially your heroes who have a low HP ratio. Now, if you have enough healing, or there are cases at the beginning of the Endless boss fight, where even if Talene is casting her ultimate, she's still at full health, and then Harak is not going to devour her. He'll devour the hero who you have in the frontmost position. But then later on in the fight, when her HP gets low, Harak could devour her, and that completely stops Harak in his tracks from ramping up his attack. He stops devouring after devouring Talene, for whatever reason. And so, yeah, that's the thing to just keep in mind. But overall, she is still your 4th hero you want to build. You can stop with her at Supreme. Again, plus 15 exclusive equipment is great for her stat breakpoint. Mythic plus 10 exclusive equipment is your first big jump for damage. Well, actually, technically, Legendary pluses. Then Mythic plus 10 exclusive equipment. Then Supreme plus 15 exclusive equipment. Then, if you get her to Supreme plus from Supreme, she's only going to gain around 12% bonus attack from Supreme to Supreme plus, which is not a huge amount, but it does make a difference. So eventually you'll want to take her to Supreme Plus, but I could understand if you stop with her at Supreme plus 15 exclusive equipment. And that's where I'm stopping with my Talene for right now, because now I need to build Harak, because the order is wrong for me. But eventually I will get Talene to Supreme Plus, because those stats will matter. Okay, that is Talene cover number 4. Now number 5. Now from this point on, there are 4 heroes, and they're all pretty much PvP heroes. However, I'm gonna say number 5 is Scarlita, because even though she's a PvP hero, I'm not considering her as only a purely PvP hero, because you have to keep in mind, last season Scarlita was used in Dream Realm and this boss teams. Her seasonal skill gave her the power that she needed to be a top tier option for some bosses, and I could definitely see in the future, depending on her charm bonuses depending on her seasonal skill, she could have the ability of regaining that spot in some of the endless teams and being a good hero to be running on them. She's also good when there are summons because she can knock them off the field with her ultimate and clear them really quickly. So I do think that Scarlita is going to be your number 5 choice after Talene, because even though she's not useful for Dream Realm right now, I do think that in the future she could be potentially useful in some bosses. Number 1. Number 2, she is also very dominant in PvP. She's more like, she basically synergizes more with the team that is more bruiser related. She does well with Harak though, because she can protect Harak with the shielding at the beginning of the match. She can protect anyone on your team with the shielding at the beginning of the match, and if your team has like the stall factor or the tankiness to survive until she comes down, she can her ultimate and her skills will be dealing true damage. She can knock enemies off the field. She still is a big threat. I still think she is a great PvP hero. But she definitely has fallen off compared to when the global launch of AFK Journey, where Scarlita was considered like the queen of PvP and like your second priority after Rainier Mythic Plus. Now she's moved all the way down to the 5th priority, and it's even arguable. Like, I mean, if you're thinking, oh well, Scarlita might never be useful in Dream Realm, now we have so many Dream Realm options, you could be right. It will depend on the season mechanics. And then in that case, you could just decide, oh, I don't want to go for Scarlita. If I'm going for a PvP hero, I'm going to build Diurnal right now, because Diurnal hits so hard and he's great on offense. So you have options, definitely, but in my opinion, I would still say Scarlita is going to be a must build for your account, because she has that unique factor. Also for AFK stages, you're going to, like in this season, Scarlita was running all the Hypogean AFK stages. Freya's Scarlita, Talene. Now things could change when future Hypogean Celestials come out. So for example, like maybe if you don't have the resources to build Scarlita, you could just hold your resources waiting for future heroes to be released before you decide for Scarlita. Because basically, after Talene, I don't consider anything maybe like a necessary must-have. But I think out of them, Scarlita is number 5, because she would be the most, like the biggest priority after the other 4 are complete, because she has that unique factors. And she is just good in PvP. Maybe in the future she could be good in Dream Realm and boss content, so I would say number 5 for Scarlita. Now you have number 6, 7, and 8, and these are all PvP, basically heroes Diurnal, Dunlinger, and Burial. Now out of them, I would say I would go for Diurnal, number 6. I'm going to go through these more briefly. So right now, Diurnal is incredibly strong on especially offense in the Supreme Arena season with the Hypogean Celestial buff tiles. But even in regular arena, on offense, Dunlinger and Diurnal has become such a like staple and hard-hitting damage dealer combo to shred through enemy defenses, stall defenses, tanky defenses. And sometimes there's just not any counterplay to it. Even on defense, people find it really difficult on defeating enemy Dunlinger Diurnal defenses. They are defeatable. You can try like a Dunlinger of your own, or you can do like the Molar Tossy type strategy, but nothing is 100%. And like if you have high investment into Diurnal, then it usually is going to win. But now the thing to mention is that he's not useful for bosses. And so, in my opinion, these final 3 heroes, Diurnal, Dunlinger, Burial, these are for people who are heavy spenders, they have all the other heroes built, and now they want to build up something else. And then it is fine. It is good. It is a good choice for you. But in my opinion, in terms of utility, like sort of building the other top 5 heroes I recommended, those are going to be better for like your PvE as well as PvP. You can use them in both. Diurnal is a purely PvP hero, but he is good. But the thing with Diurnal also is that he really wants to have Dunlinger in the team to unlock his full potential. Before having Dunlinger, just Diurnal on defense is not oppressive enough. Also, Diurnal on defense is still counterable by Sylvina Vala jumping onto the Diurnal. On offense, of course, you can't do that because no one's going to run Sylvina Vala on their defense, so then Diurnal can just freely go through and nuke through any team, like Diurnal Dunlinger team. But for example, people who are running Dunlinger Diurnal on defense, I still can clear them with Sylvina and Vala as long as they're able to mark the Diurnal, they kill him, and then the game is over, because the whole, basically, Diurnal Dunlinger team is all around Diurnal. Once Diurnal is dead, there's nothing that the team can do to kill you, because it's basically all supports in Dunlinger. Maybe one other, it could be a Scarlita as well, but like, I mean, if you kill a Diurnal quickly and you kill one other unit, Scarlita's not going to be dealing the true damage anymore, so she's not even a threat. Anyway, that is my opinion about Diurnal. He is your number 6 choice in my opinion. And then we have number 7. And even Dunlinger. Dunlinger could be maybe even before Diurnal if you wanted. Dunlinger does have that utility. I think for future proofing, he is pretty good because he can work basically with any hero, with any like hyper carry nuker. But Diurnal is a hyper carry nuker, and if another one comes out that is stronger than him overall, and he could be replaced. Now Dunlinger, I don't think will ever be replaced. He has these really unique mechanics, Spellbind especially, preventing the enemies and your allies from casting their ultimates other than the exception. And he is really good at doing that. He's really strong on Supreme Arena defense with Dunlinger, with Diurnal, and also on offense he's good with Diurnal. You can even run him in other teams, although I don't know which teams are the most effective to run him with outside of Diurnal, but he just has that utility, basically, when the opponent is relying on a lot of ultimate cast heavy team, or if they're using the special tiles on Arena Map 5, for example, Dunlinger has a good place there as well. So I do like him. I think that he's a good hero, and if, for example, if I could build all of these heroes, I would probably build Dunlinger before Diurnal, because I'm always worried about heroes being power crept, or yeah, and I think that Dunlinger, you can't power creep Dunlinger because he has that effect, right? That effect is always going to be there. I don't think any other hero will get that effect. But Diurnal could be power crept. There could be a harder hitting true damage dealer nuker that comes in the future. I could definitely see it. And then finally you have Burial. Burial is the final hero, the lowest priority, number 8 in my opinion, is because he's just not really needed for much. Like, of course, all Hypogean Celestials are good when you build them up, but he's a PvP purely hero, and even in PvP, he's not as dominant as Diurnal and Dunlinger, or at least not as meta. Like, I'm sure you can run good teams with him, but I just haven't seen him being as menacing as Dunlinger and Diurnal, for example. So he's the final slot. But anyway, guys, that is it for my priority list. Let me know what you think about it in the comment section down below. And basically, to recap it, it is Rainier to Mythic Plus, then Freyaster to Supreme, plus 15 exclusive equipment. If you want, you can take him to Supreme Plus as well. Both are totally fine, but you can start with him at Supreme if you want. Then next, number 3, Harak up to Supreme Plus. He needs to go all the way to Supreme Plus, and I would take him up to plus 15 exclusive equipment because for the stats, for Dream Realm, and for PvP, that HP recovery is important. Number 4 is going to be Taline. Taline at least up to Supreme, plus 15 exclusive equipment for the stats. If you want to take her to Supreme Plus, totally fine as well. That will give her some bonus like 12% attack as well. Then you have number 5, Scarlita. The thing is, if you just want her Mythic Plus ability, you can take her to Mythic Plus, but if you want to use her in PvP, then you'll want to get her to Supreme Plus, because those defenses that she gives with the shield, they do make a bit of a difference, and so eventually you'll want to get her to Supreme Plus, plus 15 exclusive equipment, but she's a much lower priority than the other 4. Basically, after Taline is done, you could just hold your resources and not go for the next one, but if you want to go for one next one, I would recommend Scarlita, number 5. But then after that, you can hold Diurnal, Dunlinger, Burial. They're just purely like luxury heroes, PvP related heroes. They don't help you in PvE content, and so I would unless you're a heavy spender, I would stay away from them and save for future heroes. But anyway, guys, that's it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Thank you for watching. I'll hopefully see you guys in the next video, and until then, everyone, peace out for now.